Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The HBO Max documentary All That Breathes will compete for Best Documentary Feature next month at the Oscars. I spoke with executive producer Sean Carroll, who runs Tangled Bank Studios in Chevy Chase, Maryland.
Sean Carroll, head of Tangled Bank Studios, for the film All That Breathes.
Yes, and we should say the Oscar-nominated documentary All That Breathes. You can see it on HBO Max now. It just joined that streaming lineup in the last week or two. But let's start there. Congrats on the Oscar nomination. I know I guess you're sort of executive producer here as part of the production company. But what was it like? The morning of the nominations there. I guess what was that, last month or so? And where did you watch? What was your reaction? All that fun stuff.
Well, it's early in the morning, so I was watching from home. Everyone involved in the film was sort of in a different place, and in close contact with one another, because you don't know what's going to happen. The film has had sort of a magical ride since it was first recognized at Sundance about a year ago, and a year ago I never would have expected this. We had enough success that there was a good chance that it might happen, but you don't believe it until you actually hear it and see it. So it was quite an electric thrill.
Awesome. And real quick, I want to go into the premise and all that in a second, but also real quick, you mentioned Tangled Bank Studio. Tell us the sort of the local angle, because that's what our WTOP listeners are going to want to love. Because it's an Indian filmmaker. How do you say it? Shahnuk Sen?
Shahnuk Sen, yeah.
Shahnuk Sen, yeah. So it's in Hindi language, an Indian filmmaker, but there is a DMV connection. So I want to tout that really quick at the top here. So remind us, where your studio is located and how you were involved with this.
Yeah, so Tangled Bank Studios is in Chevy Chase, so just a couple miles outside the district. We're nested within the philanthropy of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. So we're part of a nonprofit, and our mission is to bring stories about science and nature to the public. And this is one of those stories. We just never quite imagined that it would go quite this far.
Definitely. Well, and also when we're watching the film, we'll see, other famous production companies listed, like Rise Films and what is it, Kite Rabbit Films.
Kite Rabbit is the Indian.
How do those tie in with Tangled Bank? How did you all, collaborate?
If you watch the front of a lot of films, you'll see multiple companies. That reflects that a lot of production is collaborative. That's partly sort of the syndicating of finance, that's sometimes the syndicating of putting together collaborative teams. So Rise is our British partner. They actually reached out to us to see if we'd be interested in getting involved in this project. Kite Rabbit is the Indian production company that did all the producing on the ground in Delhi of the film. And we've been involved in nature and science filmmaking for about 10 years. So folks knew to reach out to us because they thought we might be interested in the subject. But it's collaboration is really the norm, not the exception in films. It takes a lot of different types of talents and that sort of honing and sharpening and polishing process to get to a film that might reach this level.
Absolutely. And so you are, just to clarify for our listeners, so you were involved sort of, I guess Rise reached out to you, but you were involved were you involved in pre-production, the whole range, or had they already started filming when they brought you on board, or where did you fall in the process?
They had already started filming. So it was late, maybe fall of 2020, kind of the middle of the worst part of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then we were on board from that point on all the way through, to the festivals and for the past year of the whole rollout. But the role that we often play is we're consulting, collaborating, a sounding board. We're trying to do everything to help the filmmaker's vision come across, but also because we have expertise in science and biology. We're also, for many of our films, we're expert consultants, and we also bring experts to the table. So it's and we're also storytellers. I'm an author, and I've been involved in making 40 or 50 films. So, storytelling and the visual craft are the really important elements for the audience. And so it takes a lot of people to, sort of, as I said, weigh in and help polish the making of a story like this.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, thanks for, just real briefly, summing up sort of the local connection to the DC area here. All right. Well, without further ado, you and I both know what it's about. I just watched it. You made it, but our listeners may not. They hear All That Breathes. Give them the basic, premise. You don't have to, do a, perfect log line or anything, but just generally, what's the basic movie about?
Two brothers in Delhi, with no formal training, see birds essentially dropping out of the sky of Delhi, and just the way they were raised by their mom, they felt they needed to do something about it. And they got a little bit of assistance from veterinarians, a little bit of guidance, but they also kind of went on their own knowledge. They were bodybuilders as teenagers, and they thought they knew enough about sort of tendons and muscles to see what they could do to help heal these birds. Many of the birds' injuries are actually from the cultural practice of flying kites competitively. And these kites, the strings are treated with like powdered glass, so that one kite string can cut another. But when a bird flies into that kite string, it can cut tendon and muscle, and they can drop out of the sky. So these two brothers started taking birds to the basement of their soap dispenser factory in Delhi, which is really just a small family business, a shop, and nursing these birds back to health and releasing them back into the wild. And 20 years later, they've treated over 26,000 birds. And they do this, on their own time, on their own dime, with, all the, everyday challenges of living in Delhi and raising a family. And making ends meet. So it's a very noble story. And we were very drawn to it because we just thought that these brothers really, really showed us that sort of no matter what your walk in life, you can do something to improve the world. And I think that this is a story that touched audiences' hearts because of that.
Oh yeah, very inspirational. And I want to get into the brothers and their amazing commitment to this in a second. But real quick, I wanted to follow up on unpack something you just said about, actual human flying kites, and then the tragic irony that these are black kites. That's the type of bird that is being falling out of the sky. Wow, I didn't even know that. Well, yeah, I guess so. Provide a little bit of the, you said you guys know the science, science it up for us a little bit. What's causing these hundreds of birds to fall from the sky every day? Like I know these guys grew up throwing meat in the sky as part of their Muslim belief to ward away troubles and all that kind of stuff. But like what scientifically is causing them to fall?
Well, there's a couple things going on. The sky in Delhi is so opaque due to air pollution that's certainly affecting vision. It's also affecting sort of the metabolism of birds. So a lot of birds have some metabolic diseases just living in that environment, and that can lead to just overall weakness. And you can imagine these are raptors. I mean, the best analogy you could think of in this area would be like a red-tailed hawk. Mm-hmm. So these are powerful birds, and they are meat eaters. And if they're compromised in any way, obviously they're going to have trouble surviving. And so it's a combination of both the air of Delhi and the hazard of these kite flying that's really combining to knock these birds out of the sky. And what's amazing about the treatment is the surgery is so fine. If you've cut a flight tendon, I mean, this is, much thinner than a pencil. To repair that tendon, I mean, veterinarians thought this was impossible. But the way the brothers judge success is that when the bird's released, you shouldn't be able to tell which wing was operated on. Wow. And I looked at footage of a lot of releases, and that's definitely the case. So over this, couple decades, they've developed such expertise that, I mean, these birds are going back in the wild with, indistinguishable, from their, uninjured neighbors. And I should also say the black kite, which is a raptor, but they also treat owls and storks. You'll see some other species of birds in the film because they'll treat any bird that's brought into their wildlife rescue. And that's
they're not going to discriminate. If a bird's in trouble, they're going to try to help it. Yeah.
Right. Well, should we give away where the title comes from?
I'm fine with that, but that's up to you.
Well, I mean, it's really referring that they don't discriminate among all that breathes, and the backstory to that people can enjoy from the film.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for hinting at it. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So to answer the original question, then though, it's like sort of like a air pollution, and not to mention the flying the kites and things like that. It's man-made stuff that's
Yeah.
infringing on the natural world. And I like the quote in there where they say Delhi is a gaping wound and we're the band-aid. So it's like they know it's this massive ecological problem, and but they're gonna do their little band-aid. They're gonna do whatever they can to help in their own little way, and the result is pretty miraculous here.
But the beautiful thing about inspiration is that, what they're doing is inspiring a lot of people to care.
Mm-hmm.
In Delhi, around India, around the world. This is the power of story. Probably the most powerful thing about the human mind is our ability to empathize with others, even though we may have nothing in common, right? So we can watch a story out of Delhi and be moved by these brothers' struggle, share in the triumph and excitement, of seeing an animal nursed back to health, and then ask ourselves, what are we doing to contribute? And this is hopefully the power, especially of documentary storytelling, is to inspire people to make a better world.
Yes, everything that you just said reminded me of that line at the end of the movie where it's sort of the why we fight, the why should we care to the whole movie and to this issue of the birds, and what I wrote it down. Where is it? Oh, you don't care about things because they share the same country, religion, or politics. Life itself is kinship. We're all a community of air. That's why we can't abandon the birds, and it ties into all that breathes. We're all a community of air. We all breathe the same air.
I asked one of the brothers, Nadim. I said, because this is exhausting work, and his brother Saud, who does all the surgeries. I mean, my gosh, multiple surgeries in an evening. You can see from the film he's just absolutely exhausted. And I said, you must have been tempted to give this up. And he just said he would the next time he saw a bird on the ground, he would never forgive himself. So he just feels, just duty bound to help these creatures.
Oh, their commitment to it is fascinating. And I guess so. Yeah, let's go into that a little bit. Speak to the brothers a little bit, Saud and Nadim. You've already spoken to their expertise and their, I guess their bodybuilder backstory of knowing bodies and ligaments and tendons and stuff, like the surgical expertise of them, but also speak to them just as two brothers characters, like they're interesting fellas. They're sitting there chit-chatting, we see them just doing surgery while talking about, I don't know, Mankind versus the Undertaker. They're just like regular people talking about wrestling or whatever, but like talk about what made them just cool characters that jump off screen as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're raising families, they're obviously experiencing all the struggles of daily life, all the joys of, whether it's sports but they have a deep, deep bond. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, and you see in the film, this is not easy work, and keeping the enterprise going is challenging. Equipment that breaks down, the shortage of funds, just the difficulty of being overwhelmed by so many birds coming in to the rescue, and that can create some tension. But nonetheless, I mean, the brothers have just the deepest bond, because this work together, they're just so entwined and in tune with each other. So it's from the film, you're getting both that. I think you can see that. I think the accomplishment of the film is to give us essentially a fly on the wall view that the brothers they're not aware of the camera. The filming took 3 years, so they got really used to the crew and camera being around, and so you have this privilege of observing their daily life in their actual environment, and that includes some touchy moments. But their dedication, and I think their devotion to each other is palpable and quite real.
Absolutely. And I want to go, you just mentioned the fly on the wall approach. I want to go a little more into that, like the filmmaking style, because, when you and I have seen a million documentaries, and there's like different ways to go about it. There could be like, the more like, I don't know, like Ken Burns does such great stuff, but that's more of like a narration and archival. You're cutting around and kind of leading the audience through based on the narration. Or there's something that's more like this, which is fly on the wall, like experiential, I guess. So the viewer is sort of experiencing it. I don't want to call it in real time. Obviously, editing is compressing time, obviously, but you know what I mean? Like, talk about sort of how the filmmaker, Indian filmmaker Chinook Sen, his approach to kind of making it you're gonna slowly pan across and see these brothers working, and the compositions are amazing. If you look at, you know, their little operating room and stuff, there's like reflections of puddles on the ground as like animals walk across. Like it is like, it feels like you're watching a movie, and that's, I say that as a compliment. But yeah, talk about sort of how that approach to the fly on the wall approach, why that you thought that worked for this.
I think he discovered, Shauna told us early on, he discovered, you know, he started with like a handheld verite approach, and it's just too close to the characters, that they're too aware of the camera. They needed to sort of pull back so that the, you know, the crew and the camera just dissolved into the background, and you know, normal activity went on. But you talk about some of those long pan shots. This is certainly, there were great cinematographers involved in this film, who developed an approach. You just realized that if you could, you know, rather than like having hard cuts from place to place inside, you know, the hot rescue hospital and the soap dispenser assembly area, you know, one long pan gave you really a sense of the whole interior. And so I think the audience gets a much better sense of the space and the and how, you know, the everyday lives of these characters, the way this is shot. So I think people have really responded to the cinematography as, you know, one of the strengths of the film. It was a very much a conscious choice after experimenting with some alternatives. And then that cinematography extends to outside the shop, outside the hospital, to everyday scenes around Delhi, where you sort of luxuriate in, you know, seeing Delhi, everyday Delhi, but maybe a little bit through the eye of its creatures. And I think it's that combination of sort of the slice of life around Delhi and the intimacy, but the very sort of patient intimacy of the scenes with the brothers that has combined to make an extraordinary film.
Yes, patient intimacy. That's the perfect quote. That's the perfect description of when, because I like to prepare listeners when they sit down, you know, they sit down to watch a documentary, to what kind of movie they're going to get, what pacing you're going to get, what tone you're going to get. And patient intimacy is actually a good way to do it. And I know we've been saying slow pans. I guess, is it pans always? I guess a lot of them are actually more like dolly shots, you know, side to side moving rather than a camera pan.
That's true. There are going to be dolly shots to cover some of that distance. But I would say, you know, to listeners who are intrigued to watch the film, get into a dark room, you know, turn off the phone, just you know, just sit down, don't just take away the distractions, don't have other stuff going on, because you're the best reward is to get immersed into this world, and that's only really going to happen through, you know, a little, you know, patient immersion in the film. It happens in a theater more easily in a giant screen, but if you're watching this, you know, on a smaller screen at home on, you know, HBO Max, whatever, that requires, I think that you'll be rewarded for filtering out all the other sort of noise that might be going on around you, and letting yourself slide into this world.
Yes, put the phone in the other room. It's got to charge anyway, right? Let this be, you know, hour and a half of charge time. Put it in the other room.
Turn the lights out. Turn the lights out. It's meant to be seen in a darkened room with kind of your full attention, and I think that's where the reward will come.
And that is where the awards came as well from. I'm sure that seeing it on a big screen, you know, that's probably why it won Grand Jury Prize for documentary at Sundance. That's why it won the Golden Eye for documentary at Cannes Film Fest. Real quick, speak to that journey. I mean, I know you mentioned it a little at the top, but just real quick, did you fly out to both of those festivals? What was it like to be so warmly received?
Sundance was virtual because Omicron hit at this as Sundance was going to get started. So that was going on, you know, virtually when, you know, we got notified that we were going to get the Grand Jury Prize for World Cinema. And, you know, you could have knocked me over with a feather then.
Unintended.
You know, yeah. Sorry about that. And then, you know, Cannes, come on. And then it's just the way the film has been embraced by film lovers, by audiences. I never, you know, I'm not just trying to be, I'm being as really honest, which I never would have predicted this. I just thought it was, you know, a small story, and, you know, the setting was not, you know, naturally beautiful. It was made beautiful by the cinematography, but I just didn't anticipate that people would embrace the film the way they have. And I get it more especially when I read either viewers' comments or reviewers' comments, that I understand that this is sort of working for people at multiple levels. And that's why I keep encouraging people, when you watch the film, just give yourself the chance to immerse. And I think it has rewards at different levels. And you can't, 2 years ago, you couldn't have drawn this up on paper and said, well, we're going to make a film that's going to work in this particular way. I think that's sort of the, alchemy of art. You don't know how the elements are coming together. Talented, hardworking people, try. And I think, just sometimes these elements just work in a where the whole is much bigger than the sum of the parts. And that happened here.
The alchemy of the art, man. You're coining some good phrases here, my friend.
Oh man, I'm pulling them out. I don't usually have to talk like this. I'm a scientist. I usually stay on the less poetic side of the street.
You know what? Art and science go hand in hand more than people think.
That's absolutely true, Jason. I would tell you, and success in both, as I said, is rare. When I say success, it's not like just like you got a job, et cetera. I mean, the high achievement in science and high achievement in art, no matter how talented or how hardworking people are, you just only kind of, hit that high watermark so rarely. And this is just one of those times that, I think none of us really quite expected it, but it happened. So we're just relishing it.
Well, keep on relishing it. We'll relish with you, on Oscar night. The whole DC area will be rooting for you. And we got, there's some tough competition. Laura Poitras is on Beauty and the Bloodshed and Fire of Love. There's so many good ones. But
and Navalny. There's great films out there. It's hard to pick one. So we feel we've already won. I don't mean that as some cliche. This has so exceeded our wildest imagination that we're just trying to enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned Navalny. That we got the Russian ties with that, and the house made of splinters is Ukrainian ties. So who knows if current events is going to drive this the outcome.
Yeah, and look, this is the thing about you going to the movies, right? Different people have different tastes, different kind of stories resonate in different ways. We're just grateful that this has touched so many people, and whatever happens at Oscar night, let's just hope it's a fun party.
Well, we're rooting for you, and like you said, you've already won regardless. All the nominees have already won. But let's end there then. The fun party. Where are you going to be? Are you actually flying out to the Oscars? Are you going to be there? Or are you watching?
Yeah. No. So we'll be there, and I'm still learning the after party scene. So I know there's some after parties going on, and I got a little glimpse of this on the weekend. I was at the BAFTAs, the British Academy Awards, and for a scientist, I sort of feel like I'm visiting another planet. But for filmmakers, of course, this is Mecca. So I'll try. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it just as much as everybody else who's there.
Yes. And just to clarify, as executive producer, are you going to actually be in the auditorium? Like, how many seats did they give you guys?
Now, the three official nominees are the two producer, Aman Maan and Teddy Leifer, and the director, Shaunak Sen. And then executives, myself and my co-executive producer, David Alisco, will be up off the floor, most likely, in higher perched seats. And in terms of going to the stage, I'm not quite sure how that's going to be choreographed. If we win, I don't know if we'll be running down there and joining them or not. We'll get the rules when we get there. It's just something they do in documentary, whereas with scripted films, the executive producers and all that are involved. In documentary, we're kept in the seats.
It's okay. And will it be during the telecast this year? Have they announced which ones are? You remember last year there was that whole snafu of pre-televised categories and all that, but it will be during the actual show this time.
It'll be during the actual show. Yeah, documentary will be during the actual show. So we'll just be crossing our fingers through that moment and enjoying all of the spectacle and pageantry.
Spectacle and Pat. Yeah, don't slap anyone if you if you go on
No,
stage. That was
no,
much last year. We'll keep
no,
it cool
no.
this year.
We documentary. I don't think is going to do anything controversial. I think I can feel comfortable saying that. Yeah.
I'm kidding, of course, but yeah, well, it's really cool. You know, whether you have to parachute down from the balcony or whatever, that'd be so cool to see you on stage or however it is. Either way, like you said, you're already a winner for being there, so that's so cool. Thanks for your time. You've been generous. Anything else you want to add before we hop off here?
Enjoy the movie, everybody.
All right, thanks. Sean Carroll, executive producer of All That Breathes, now on HBO Max, Oscar nominated at the Oscars this year. Hey, thanks.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.